projection, move towards the sides. I think it's going to be a great talk, and I agree. Some basic stuff. If you're having a good time and you want to know how you can get in touch with us, here is how to get a hold of us. softwarecraftphilly.org is our website. Twitter handles and hashtags. Thank you, PompWorks, for food and space. Yay! Let's see. Please give us feedback on venue and food. Yay, not pizza.
Yeah, that was really good.
Okay, some good stuff to know. The men's and ladies' room keys are just around the corner here. It looks like your standard Ethernet jack, but it's not. Those are the actual keys. The guest SSID is PompWorks guest. Password and Craftspeople. Other good details, right? The ladies' room is just outside our front door. The men's room is on the other side of the elevator bay. Got the guest info, wireless. Find us on Philly Dev Slack. We're there if you'd like to chat. Normally we would be doing a kata tonight as part of hanging out together, but we're skipping it. We're just going to solely enjoy the talk and food and each other's company. Do hang out and have a beer with us afterwards at a local bar. A little bit about why we have this group. So this is kind of a language agnostic group devoted to software as a craft, and it's all driven by these software craftsmanship manifesto principles. Well-crafted, steady, adding value to community professionals and productive partnerships. So for those of you who are new, we have some practical talks. We also have some sort of soft skills talks like these. Just to sort of round out that whole craftsmanship experience. And the organizers underneath are me. I'm an engineer here at PompWorks. Yay. Javon is over there. He's an engineer at Comcast. And our third missing partner in crime is Justin Campbell. He is a full-time remote employee at HashiCorp. He's very sorry he can't hear me. But next time. Good thing. You can read more about the Software Craftsmanship Manifesto here. And there is a national conference. It's coming up on November 6th. Check out the website for more details if you're interested in going and learning more. Welcome, welcome, welcome. A few announcements before we get started. Javon is looking for participants and organizers for the Global Day of Code on November 14th. Did I get those details right?
I'm not sure about the date, but it's in November. The first couple weeks. So it's a Global Day of Code Retreat, which is the day where you get to practice your craft by not having deadlines, and you have to do TDD and pair programming. Let's say Justin and I are both busy, and we usually host one, so we're looking for someone to host one. We can get you space and food and all that stuff. You just have to be there and facilitate. And there's training on how to facilitate it if you don't know how but want to. Yes, you can Google it, Global Day of Code Retreat.
I did that a couple years ago. It was awesome. Cool. So the plan for night, no kata. We're going to have one lightning talk by Dana Giordano, wherever she went. There's Dana again. And then we're going to go right into Jesse. I am so afraid of butchering his name. Jiryu Davis's talk. So first up, Dana is a brand new developer and is less than 6 months into her first game. She's going to talk about her mentoring experience at Weblet, development shop.
So I had not prepared at all. Sarah asked me 10 minutes ago, and hi. So I have been trying to learn Ruby on Rails for probably off and on for about 2 years. And when I first started, I thought that making the environment in Rails meant I was ready for a job. You would think I would know better because I've been around in the industry for probably about 10 years of different roles, kind of trying to find one that I really liked and thought that kind of fit me. And I wandered over here by accident and I really liked it, so I continued to pursue it even though it was a little challenging. And then trying to figure out, what it was that I needed to know to be good enough to get a job. When I started, I was not aware of a lot of things that really in hindsight I should have been. But when people are entering in kind of an unusual way, like you have gone to engineering school, I got a fine arts visual media degree. So everything that I've been doing has been self-taught, but really not self-taught, but like friends and mentors that I've met along the way have provided actually a lot of support. And if you're a mentee or a mentor talking to a mentee, like keeping them going when it just seems like there's too much to learn is honestly really, 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 really big. I can't stress how big it is for somebody to know that you're in their court. Because you can do the work, but eventually at some point you start to feel like it's really hard and that maybe you won't make it. And so that happens, well, it happens often. But I think that, I can't stress how much that is. And being available for them to feel safe enough to ask stupid questions. Like, when I started, I didn't feel safe asking stupid questions. This was like my really, really good friend. And would always answer and sometimes maybe it was stupid, but you know, we managed to work that out. And that's the other thing, because you don't know what's going to happen. So you have to continue to talk to each other. Along the way, I started to meet people that provided different areas. People always say, hey, you know how to do this, and you don't even know how to do it. But what it did was provide an avenue for something to learn, and that's how I met Sarah. And I met Sarah in like the news at a hackathon, where I said, hey, I want to learn this weird thing that somebody said that I should know so that maybe I can get a job doing this. And everyone looked at me like I was insane, but that was really I don't know what I want to do, I just want to do this. And Sarah, came over and, taught me a lot and, has been a big, big support. But the thing is, like, I have a mentor at work that has been very helpful in giving me shoves when I'm not really feeling like I'm ready. And I think the thing that I'm learning is you never feel like you're ready. And you may not be ready, but you'll still figure it out. And that everybody has really been surprisingly nice, surprisingly supportive. And the only thing you have to do is ask. And, as someone who's new, just keep asking, even if you feel like you're never going to get there, just keep asking. It's okay to be like, just walk away for a little bit, and keep asking, because that's that's software. Somebody is going to know more than you, thank God, and they're going to have an idea of something the direction you want you. And someday, and even now, like for the, what I would call the awakening of how little I know, I can still help people who are newer than me, who are about the same as me, because we're starting to develop a vocabulary. And as the more experienced you get, I think it's so easy to forget all the things that trip you up when you were a new person. All the parts of the environment that you needed to know, that you weren't even aware of before you didn't even get to the part of doing Rails. And that all your experiences can help you with that. You just have to, ask questions and find people that you can actually talk to. The web is great, but it's a lot easier if you can kind of talk to people. There are different meetups, like there's the Really Ruby meetup, which isn't particularly Ruby central, which is partly my fault because I don't know anything, because I've been talking about it for a while. One of the things that I found hardest was when I was transitioning into this role is that there are very, very, very few engineering roles in the city. Very few. fill that gap that you won't really know until you are in a job to kind of get you ready. And that's how we entered Weblang, was that kind of experimental thing. I don't know if it's a successful player as far as they're concerned. But there are people who want to learn if there are just avenues where they can get totally and just be able to for it. So, you know, don't know how anybody here would do it, but I know that, you know, I was very grateful that I managed to finally make it. It was very scary because it just didn't seem like I was gonna. That's it.
He's a staff engineer at MongoDB in New York City, and he came all the way down to talk to us. Thank you. Mongo is also sponsoring his travel and accommodations, so thank you, Mongo. Let's see. He's the author of Motor, the async MongoDB Python driver. He leads development of the MongoDB C Driver and is a member of the PyMongo team. He contributes to asyncio and Tornado, and is a staff engineer. Thank you very much. I'll get out of your way.
Pardon? Okay. So Sarah invited me down to talk to you about mentoring, which is super exciting for me because it's a tough subject. It's difficult for me, but I really care about it. And I want to share that it's possible to develop yourself as a mentor, to improve it as a skill. And there are specific prerequisites that I've found for a successful mentorship. So that's what I want to talk about today. I started to think and write about mentoring when I first read this essay by John Alspaugh. And he writes a ton of really insightful things in this article. So I cannot strongly enough recommend that you read the whole thing. It covers many aspects of being a senior engineer. But it's the mentoring section that particularly inspired me when I first read it. He says that, so John Alspaugh, he's a senior vice president of something or other at Etsy, and he says that mature engineers lift the skills and expertise of those around them. He goes on to say that generosity of spirit is one of our core engineering values, but also a primary responsibility of our staff engineer position, a career level position. These engineers spend the time to make sure that more junior or new engineers unfamiliar with the tech or processes we have not only understand what they are doing, but also why they are doing it. Teaching to fish is a mandatory skill at this level. So this is a guy who hires and promotes and gives raises to people like us. And when he says that mentoring is a mandatory skill, people like us should listen to people like him saying that mentoring is mandatory for advancing in our careers. So, what is a mentor? Where does this word come from? It comes from the Odyssey. Once upon a time, Odysseus left to fight the Trojan War. And he left behind his newborn son, who's named Telemachus. And Odysseus spent 9 years fighting the Trojan War, and then it took him 9 years to get back home after that, due to horrible luck and a horrible sense of direction. And meanwhile, Telemachus was growing up without a father, and wasn't maturing into the warrior, the adult role that was expected of him. And he was unable to face the challenges of his life because because he didn't have anybody to guide him. His mother, Odysseus' wife Penelope, was beset by suitors, jerks who were hanging out in the dining hall of their castle and eating all the food and drinking all the wine and harassing Penelope. And Telemachus couldn't even lift his father's bow against them, and he couldn't drive them out. So the goddess Athena, goddess of craft and war and wisdom, sees the situation, and she comes to Earth disguised as a man named Mentor in order to cultivate Telemachus's skills and to help him mature into the warrior that he needed to be. So that's where the word comes from. And among other things, it means that mentee is not, in my opinion, a word, although it's used as once, right? I like apprentice, protege, pupil are all great words. And if you really want to impress your friends, you could say, my Telemachus. And have a weekly status page. So that's what a mentor is. Why should you develop yourself as a mentor? Why would you want to take on this role? Well, as John Alspaugh wrote, it's critical to your career. You will be evaluated on this. This is a prerequisite for advancement. This is expected of you in your role. It's also crucial for their careers, right? Aside from your self-interest, if you are moved by generosity towards younger engineers, if you want to share some of your own accomplishments with them and enable them to advance as well, this is the main way to do it, is by guiding them individually in these intimate, long-term relationships. You have to make a commitment, but this is how, in my experience, junior engineers advance, is by having good mentors. It's more important than talent, than what programming languages they chose, where they went to school. Certainly this was true for me when I was coming up, that having a good, skilled mentor is overwhelmingly what makes the difference. It's also crucial to your company's future. Every company has a ton of senior engineering positions open that we can't fill. And as Dana was saying, nobody is willing to make the investment in junior engineers. So it doesn't work, right? There's a mismatch. There are not enough senior engineers, but everybody needs them. So the way companies grow, if they're smart, the way we're growing mainly, is not by waiting around for a senior engineer to pop out of nowhere and fill one of these positions, but to grow them. And the way we grow them, it's not by assigning them homework or sending them to conferences, it's by mentoring them. That's how they become senior. That's how they gain the wisdom to occupy that senior role. And aside from your self-interest in the individual toward whom you might feel generous, your company's future, our whole industry's future depends on new senior engineers being cultivated. The people who are going to invent the next awesome piece of software, found the next great open source project, lead communities once we're all gone. The way that we grow them, the way that we establish that next generation is by directly mentoring them and sharing our wisdom. So I'm going to talk about 3 mentorships that I was involved in, that I was asked to lead. The first was a total disaster. By the end of my first summer being a mentor to interns, I felt terrible. I vowed never to do it again. I thought that I was incapable of it. My interns are actually taken from me for their own good to somebody else to complete the mentorship. total loss. And that actually sort of partly qualifies me to talk about mentorship, right? I know what can go wrong. But after that, we're going to talk about another case study, which is a turnaround for me. And then the third case will be the third internship that I led, which was this unbelievable success based on what I learned from this initial disaster. So I want to tell you a little bit about that first failed mentorship. And in retrospect, that there were a lot of warning signs that I could have seen, and nowadays I would. So what happened is I had a colleague, Gary, and we were talking about ideas for summer internships, and Gary said, we work for MongoDB. MongoDB does stuff with big data. We should do something cool with big data. Period. And so he wrote this idea down in the list of ideas, and he said, but I can't guide it. I need to work on something else. So it's up to you. Will you lead this something cool with big data internship? So that was warning sign number one, was that the guy whose idea it was not there. And in my experience, you either need to be mentoring pupils who are working on the thing that's your vision, or at the very least, the visionary has to be present. If the visionary is not there to guide the project and keep it on track, it's almost certainly not going to work. The other problem is you can tell from the title of the internship is that something cool with big data is not a clear goal, and it's not broken up into steps. And so it's frustrating, there's no sense of accomplishment, we don't know if we're making progress or not. I can't tell if they're stuck. Without a detailed roadmap, your mentoring relationship is probably not going to work out well. So this lack of clear goals was an obvious problem. It was obvious to me. It was especially obvious to the people at MongoDB who were running our summer internship program. They were keeping close tabs on me. It's not their fault that this thing failed. They kept saying, Jesse, when are you going to come up with a roadmap? What are the goals? How do we know if this thing is succeeding or failing? How do we know if your interns are stuck or not? And I kept saying, next week, I'm going to come up with goals. And one of the reasons why it was so hard for me to do that was that I didn't actually know anything about big data. I still don't. It's not my specialty. I'm good at some things, but not this. My interns actually came in with a ton of skills. So I had these two interns, Sweet and Daniel. And they were very talented, very well trained. They knew a lot about Java and Hadoop, machine learning, statistics. And so given this mandate, they actually did a lot of stuff. They came up with conclusions, they wrote a bunch of code, but I couldn't tell if what they were doing was right or not, and I couldn't guide them. Like they were going fast, but I wasn't steering. And so the goals of having a mentorship that I can provide guidance and help them mature, and also the goal of an internship that they can demonstrate to us that they're good software engineers, neither of those was being fulfilled at all. And I just spent the whole summer kind of feeling bad. Like I knew that I was failing. I didn't want to admit that I knew that I was failing. I hid from my interns. I worked from home. I took the long way around to the bathroom. I ignored their emails and their IMs. And I was just trying to lie low and pretend it wasn't failing until it was all over. And then I could say, I told you so, I'm no good at this. You can't make me do it again. And everywhere in life we have to pay attention to our feelings. our intuition tells us, is this going well or not? Pretty accurately. But especially here, where it's not about, is the project, are the issues being resolved at the right pace? Are you writing code at the right pace? This is all about the quality of your relationship with the people you are mentoring. It's all about your feelings. And if you feel bad, you need to be decisive. I needed to have the courage to say, something has got to change. We can't just wait until this thing falls apart. We actually have to fix it. In this case, that's not what happened. My managers simply gave up on me, took my interns, gave them to somebody else, somebody who could reassign them to a project with clear goals, at which he was expert, and just barely, just like 3 weeks to go, saved the internship and had a reasonably valuable outcome for the summer despite me. But for my part, it was a complete disaster. Everybody was disappointed at me. I got very mad emails from my bosses. I got a terrible review. I was told, like, if you want to advance, you need to shape up this film. I felt like I had the wolf by the ears. You can't hold on and you can't let go. Or to continue with the Greek mythology, it felt like baby Heracles when he was attacked by a python and couldn't defeat it and couldn't let go. So, I won't leave you with this, right? There was a turnaround, and it's one of the great generosities that have been given by MongoDB. It's one of the things I'm most grateful for is that they didn't give up on me. Even though I've been such a disaster, they said, we have new grads, people that we're hiring in the fall full-time, and we're going to assign one to you. We're going to give you a second chance. And I was assigned this extremely talented young woman named Amalia Hawkins to work on the MongoDB Python driver with me for 6 weeks as part of her initial rotation. And it was great. She gave me the highest marks, I gave her the highest marks. We established a professional relationship that has continued to be satisfying and beneficial to both of us to this day. It was just this incredible triumph, just coming a couple of months after my total disaster. And in retrospect, a lot of the reasons why this was such a turnaround were basically the inverse of every warning sign that should have told me that the previous mentorship was likely to fail. So whereas before I didn't know what I was talking about, I was trying to guide these mentors. In this case, Amalia and I, we were working on PyMongo, something I worked on full-time for years. I knew the code inside and out. And so when she asked me a question, I could focus on how do I answer this in a way that trains her? How do I guide her in a way that gets the most value out of this mentorship, rather than having to spend most of my mental capacity trying to figure out, well, what is the answer, because I have no idea. The other thing is that since we were working on an established project, which is a couple years old, it's got a roadmap, it's got a bunch of features and bugs in its tracker, we could pick things up, we could pick off small, clear goals that she could do, and then she could bite off larger and larger chunks as her confidence improved. And so we could immediately tell if she was stuck. We were like, this should have taken a day, what's going wrong? We could fix any problems as they arose really quickly. The other thing is that not only was I expert at PyMongo, but PyMongo's maintainer, Bernie Hackett, was also involved in the mentorship. So the visionary was there. He knows the roadmap, he knows what Amalia would work on next that would be most beneficial. He knew the difference between fixing the bug for now versus fixing it in a way that positions the project well for its long-term goals. He was in it every day, And that really made a huge difference in making sure that both we got a lot of value out of her work and that she learned what it looks like to contribute to a project that's on a long road, which is the kind of craft that we're all trying to teach each other. And besides that, I felt good. We had a fun time together. It was really fun to work with Ryan. And that's one of the reasons why that professional relationship continues to provide value long after that initial 6-week rotation is over. So, on the basis of this 1 6-week period that we spent intensely working together, we've continued to support each other in the long run. I help her whenever she's applying to a conference or needs a recommendation. She helps me when I need a code review or when I need some piece of writing complete. And I feel like we're in this long-term partnership that's going to continue to pay off. So I asked her what she observed me doing during our mentorship. I asked her, what did you see me learn as I was mentoring you that made this whole thing pay off so nicely? And she actually had a ton of really specific feedback. So one of the things that she said I did well that contributed to the success was that I was eager to help. Or at the very least, I appeared eager to help, which is almost as good. And the reason why it's so important to at least appear eager to help, you were talking about this earlier, is that like dumb questions, there's a lot of anxiety around dumb questions. And the problem with being unwilling to admit that you don't know is that you block. And there's no value in a blocked apprentice. In our industry, we really overemphasize this idea that like you should demonstrate that you can figure it out on your own. You shouldn't waste the time of people who are more senior and more important than you. And this is a complete fallacy. It's a total waste of time. If an intern is blocked, she's not learning, I'm not learning anything about her as a software engineer. It's like how long she stays blocked doesn't add any information to my understanding of what she's good at. She's not learning, she's not writing code, she feels bad, I feel bad. So I need to make sure that she can ask me questions immediately. There's no point in getting stuck and trying to figure things out on your own. I know that it's like a radical idea, but you cannot let them block. And besides just being eager to answer questions, like, hey Jesse, what's the answer to this factual question? Oh, I know the factual answer to that question because I found it out last month when I was figuring this out. There's an even more interesting moment, which is admitting that you don't know. When I admit that I don't know, there's a couple of payoffs to that moment. One of them is that I'm just modeling what it's like to be comfortable not knowing. And if we are not comfortable admitting what we don't know, if we're always trying to prove that we already know it, that we can figure it out on our own, it's a big waste of time. We don't learn very much, and we're not very productive. So it's important to demonstrate that it's okay not to know the answer to things. But even more important than that, admitting that I don't know leads to like the golden 1 or 2 hours that are so rare, but constitute the most valuable time in an internship, which is the moment when you can solve a problem together. Everything else is like super Google. You know, ask me a question, oh, I can retrieve the answer. Or a super textbook. I can explain this to you, I could explain it to anybody, right? The reason you're asking me is because you couldn't find it in a textbook. You don't need a mentorship. You don't need this expensive, difficult, emotionally fraught relationship in order to answer factual questions. The point of the mentorship, of that close relationship, is to teach problem solving. Because you can't write down how to do it. And you can't even really explain it. You have to teach it by demonstrating your intuition operating. That's how this wisdom is transmitted. It can't be explained, but it can be transmitted. And that's what the mentorship is set up to cause. But unfortunately, it's very hard to know when it's going to happen. So you just have to wait around. Then at some point, your intern asks you a question and you don't know the answer. And it's scary because you might look like a fool, you don't know how long this is going to take. But these are the golden hours, and you should soak in them. You should love them, because this is what it was all for. It's to teach what can't be explained. So, a couple of slides that are not in the order I expected. And so I had this wonderful turnaround experience with a model. And so when the next summer came around and MongoDB said, do you want to take another shot at mentoring interns? I said, yes. I've seen failure, I've seen success, I know the prerequisites that make the difference. And I can design an internship that is going to succeed. I know that it needs an expert mentor. So I found a project that could use reviving. It's this third-party MongoDB driver. It's called Monary. It's a NumPy driver for MongoDB. So NumPy is a Python statistics library. And what Monary does is it goes directly from the database, MongoDB, to the format that NumPy can do statistics on without any intermediate data representation. This makes it unbelievably fast. It can download well over 1 million words per second, I think. There we go. Way faster than anything else at this one specialized task. But it had been a couple of years since it had been maintained. It was starting to kind of show its age. It needed to be revived. So it's written in Python and C, and it uses MongoDB, and I'm a Python and C MongoDB developer. So great. And I added in another developer who's more expert at C than I was. He agreed to help me mentor us, so we got the experts on board. The other cool thing is that we had a conference call with Monary's maintainer ahead of time, and we laid out a roadmap. We're going to try to get some interns to work on this thing. What is your list of priorities? And we came up with a bunch of small, clear goals, and we said, okay, each of these, we understand what the problem is, we have a good idea of what it will look like once it's solved, and we'll do them in this order. And then the final thing is that we got the maintainer to agree to a weekly check-in with us so that the visionary would continue to be present throughout the internship and make sure that we were doing something that contributed to his long-term goals for the project. And the outcome was incredible. Kyle Suarez and Matt Cotter, the two interns who worked with me on this, they got the highest rating from me and from our managers. They gave me the highest rating. I was stamped as now having turned myself around and learned how to be a competent guide to interns. They gave their first conference talk as undergraduates at PyGotham. They contributed like a dozen pull requests. This project that had been in danger of becoming obsolete was revived. Its maintainer was overjoyed at all of these high quality contributions that he was receiving. We offered them both full-time employment. They both accepted full-time employment, so we were able to meet our recruiting goals. I got a promotion 6 months later. It's like everything that you can possibly expect out of this, we got. And it's not mainly because of me being like a different kind of person, or my having particularly matured as an engineer in that year. It was because I knew what prerequisites we needed to put in place before we even knew their names, before we even had their resumes, in order for the internship to be successful. So I'm going to conclude by anticipating some of your objections to my argument that you can and should be a good mentor. And I'm going to shoot them down one by one. So for me, the main excuse is I'm an introvert. I don't like talking to people. I have to talk to people too much as it is. Why would I promise to develop an intimate relationship with a young coder that lasts all summer, where I am responsible for them having a happy and satisfying time at my company? Or why would I agree to take on as a protege a junior engineer in his or her first year as an engineer? Why would I take responsibility for that? Why would I take on that emotional burden? I just want to code. That's why I'm a software engineer. Damn it, I'm an engineer. And I can shoot this down, first of all, because I'm an introvert. And introverts, you know, we're sort of, I'm reading more and more about what this really means and recognizing myself in what I read. It doesn't mean that we're like bad at being with people. Or even that we necessarily dislike being with people. Like I like giving talks because it's a predictable, motivated, sort of ritualized interaction. I can rehearse for it. And an internship or a mentorship, it's the same kind of thing. It's got a purpose, it's structured, it's predictable. And that's the sort of interaction that I like. Also, introverts tend to be very good at it. We're good listeners, we're approachable, we can sort of coax a shy intern or a shy new graduate out of his or her shell. We're actually superpowered at this. So being an introvert is not an excuse. It doesn't mean that you can't be a good mentor. It might make you hesitate, but it doesn't mean that you'll be bad at it. The other thing is, people might say, like, I'm a good coder, but I'm not a good teacher. I can't explain what I know. And I hope that I've described to you why that's exactly what a mentorship is for. It's for transmitting what can't be explained by working closely together one-on-one, by doing together rather than teaching. And if you've had disasters like me in the past, if you think you're a bad mentor, probably what happened was not that you're bad at it, but that the mentorship did not have the prerequisites in place. It was not correctly designed. It had structural flaws. You were trying to mentor somebody at something you're not an expert at, or the visionary wasn't there, or you hadn't set up the roadmap correctly. If you've got everything in place, it's probably going to go well. And between having it well designed and having a little bit of practice behind you, I think just about anybody can be a good mentor. Now, you might say, okay, I believe that it's important and I believe that I can do well at it, but I still don't actually want to. And my only real answer to that is that Athena, as far as I know, no longer comes to Earth to mentor young people, but somebody's got to do it, and if we don't, Athena will be mad at us. She is not somebody that you want to have manage you. So I'll finish with, I found this neat Roman bas-relief. This is Athena, and she's teaching Jason and the Argonauts to build a boat, the fastest boat ever. And Athena, in addition to all of her other traits, is also the goddess of weaving. She's the inventor of weaving. And so what she's doing here is she's teaching Jason how to weave sailcloth to make it light and strong. And you'll notice what's absent here. She doesn't have a PowerPoint. There's no like desk chairs. This isn't a university. Universities are a recent invention, and I still don't think that they're very good at teaching software as a craft. This is how software as a craft is taught, the way crafts have always been taught, between masters and apprentices, over the long haul, by actually doing it together. So if you're committed to preserving and refining this young craft that we have, and ensuring that the next generation continues it and advances it even further than we can imagine, being a mentor is by far the way to do it. Thanks.
We have time for questions?
Yeah, let's do some questions.
An excuse that I've heard more at a company level than an individual level is worry about doing an apprenticeship over, like, for a remote team. It sounds like you have done. Can you speak to that specifically?
That's really interesting. I don't know much about that. Have you tried that yourself yet? Or you're
Not
just
in like a
thinking?
company
Yeah.
atmosphere.
Huh. For me, I've always mentored my apprentices directly. There have been outside helpers, like the maintainer of the project, my video conferencing, but I'm one-on-one. I think it probably helps, but remote work, it's probably not insurmountable. But I imagine there would be a bit of an impact. Okay. That's my guess. I haven't tried it yet. Uh-huh.
How do you overcome the, you mentioned it, I don't know how long this is going to take.
Yeah.
I'm really scared
Yeah.
because this could blow my day. How
Yeah.
do you overcome that? That's my biggest.
Yeah, that's painful and scary for me. I have a huge backlog. I think we all have huge backlogs. And between that and also the fear of being interrupted, like, oh, I'm so deep. Oh, if I just have another minute, I'm sure I'll figure out. Oh, okay, yes, I'll answer your question. It's painful, but at least for us at MongoDB, we need to hire a lot of people. So we have to run great internships for undergraduates. And then we're going to hire all these people, and then we need to train them all and cultivate them all. If we're going to ensure a future for the next 3 years, 10 years. We work on hard stuff, and we need smart, wise people with good judgment. So it's a priority. And even though it feels bad, like I might waste my whole day on this thing, or I don't know how many times I'm going to be interrupted today, you just have to understand like why it's so important. For me, it's still painful, but I believe it's worth it. There are a lot of painful things that are worth it.
So I thought it was interesting you were talking about not letting the junior developers or interns get blocked, and then you were talking about these teaching moments where you go through solving a problem versus like retrieving textbook answers where you just give them the answer. What are your thoughts on, even if you know the answer, like guiding them? Is that just a time type thing? Or?
Yeah. Amy Hanlon gave a talk that I recently saw where she was talking about code reviews. And one of the things that she really pointed out that was great was that don't say what to do, say what's wrong with the patch that you're reviewing. So it's easy to say like that's the wrong format code for that size or whatever. Better to say this may not format correctly. Don't say like change this line to this. Say there's a problem with this line. And there may be several steps of that before you lead them to the final outcome. And that's fine because their output is not the important thing. of the mentorship, right? It's the relationship, it's the guidance providing. So I think that, yeah, there is sort of a fine line between don't let them block, but also don't just give them the answer, where they have to be making continual progress, but that's different from just sort of hauling them from 0 to 60 by just giving them the answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Maybe some people in the back. Oh, yeah.
So at my company, we're often in a situation where like, I would love to hire some more junior developers. Let's go look at some coding boot camps. Let's get some people right out of there. And the response I often get is something along the lines of like, yeah, that would be great. We really want to do that. And we need some more senior engineers first so we have the bandwidth to do this. How do I overcome this on an institutional level?
That's really tough. Do you have senior positions that you can't fill?
Yes.
I mean, that would be my argument. Also, you might make the argument that being an effective mentor is a skill that your existing senior engineers need to develop in order to advance themselves. And so in both ways, if you want your entire company to both expand and deepen, mentoring junior coders is a great way to do that. Everybody gets a big payoff.
Part of the reason we probably got a shortage of senior engineers is because our senior engineers are doing a lot of junior engineer things because they're not around to do that. So by having senior people who can do things that they're capable of, you can free up that capacity to do more things, make your organization more efficient.
Right. In the long run.
A lot.
Right, but it's an investment in the short run. You have to be willing to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the projects for interns, do they have a critical path for the company as a whole? Or how much latitude do they have to fail?
They had a ton of latitude, and I would be very nervous to put interns on the critical path. I think that right, that can distort your priorities, because the priority really ought to be demonstrate to an intern that he or she should take your offer if you extend it, right, so that you can fill your pipeline. So it should be fun rather than like trying to extract work out of them for a summer. And you also need to have the patience to, gently guide an intern towards the answer. And if they're on the critical path and you're late, which you always are, at least I always am, there won't be the time to really invest in that guidance. Yeah.
It sounded like with your second round of summer interns, you found a project that seemed like it had a lot of potential impact while also not being on the critical path, as you said.
Right.
Do you have any general guidelines about selecting those sorts of things? Because it seems like, I don't know, that seems like a difficult decision to me. I've had this situation of kind of like, well, we don't want them on the critical path, so let's have them do this project all by themselves off in a corner that
Right.
like is somewhat inconsequential, and that also feels crappy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've been particularly noticing that recently, that like, if it's sort of a science experiment, it will tend to just get thrown away at the end of the summer, and that's no good for anybody.
Right.
So I think that like adding optional features to an existing project is the right balance there. They need to be part of a team. That's how you learn software engineering, is by working as part of a team and by watching a team effectively use good software engineering practices together to advance a project. So if you're working on your own, you're not getting to observe that very much. But at the same time, if you're on the critical path, that's problematic too. So I think that sort of being like next to the critical path, but still sort of feeling it flowing next to you and contributing to it if it works out, but it's okay if it doesn't. So there's enough time in the summer to like, well, it didn't work out, but we learned a lot, right? And we'll finish your thing and it will be deployed. I think that's the balance to strike. All right, I'm gonna finish it there. I I do want to, first of all, guide you to my website, emptysquare.net. If you look up mentoring there, I've got a article there that's got a lot of the same content, but it goes into a lot more depth. Check out John Alspaugh, and just generally sort of, if you don't yet think of yourself as somebody who guides young people and imparts wisdom as opposed to just like typing a bunch of code and making cool hacks, consider whether in the long run it might not be more satisfying for you. If some of your legacy is not just cool code that's like fast and correct, but also successful young people whose accomplishments we can continue to be proud of for decades. Thanks.
If you'd like to join us for a beer, Javon is going to be leading the early party over to Fernie's just around the corner. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you next month. Keep your eyes peeled for meetup.